So one of the things that I like to do is I like to play Dungeons and Dragons. D&D, yes. I'm a geek. I've always been a geek, and I am proud to let my geek flag fly. So I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons since there has been Dungeons and Dragons. Going back to the very first edition. And I remember the heady days when Advanced Dungeons and Dragons came out, what people tend to call second edition. AD&D. Oh, the times were amazing, my friends. But at the same time, back then, there was the whole satanic panic, and playing D&D was bad. It was bad. It was not good. You shouldn't play D&D. People get caught up in it. The Satanism. People jumping off bridges. And I remember those stories. I remember people talking about it. I remember people in my own church who were speaking out against D&D and the evils thereof. That it was just a grooming practice for getting people to become Satanists. People in my own church. I'm LDS, by the way, commonly referred to as Mormons. I'm a Mormon, and I'm proud to be a Mormon. I've been a Mormon all my life. There was a time, a span there where I was not active, and I didn't pay attention to it, but I've come back to it. And one of the things that I found out was that, some of the people there in the very beginnings that helped turn D&D into what it is now, well, they were Mormon too. Can't be all that bad then, right? And, I didn't know that at the time, so we couldn't really argue against all the adults who were freaking out because, fireball. I guess that's just a little bit too much for people with no imagination to handle. But I loved it, and I've played it a lot in the past, and I'm still playing it. Now, recently, we started a new campaign. It's going to be a short campaign because it's just a feeler to seeing how it's working. But it's 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons in Star Wars. So we're playing a Star Wars campaign using 5th edition rules and modifications thereof. And because it's just a feeler campaign, we're doing a lot of stuff in a very simplistic manner. But man, I'm having so much fun with it. It's different. I remember there was and I don't remember what it's called right now. Maybe somebody can comment and let me know. But back in the early days of AD&D, there was a module that was a sci-fi setting, because D&D is a multiverse, okay? And being a multiverse, having a sci-fi setting is just fine. Now, there's a current sci-fi setting, and I believe that is called Spelljammer. I haven't played it because when I play D&D, mostly it's all set in the Sword Coast regions. Anyway, I digress. But I remember that early AD&D sci-fi setting. You had some various sci-fi weapons that aren't your typical D&D weapons. But I remember the pictures, and that's the greatest thing about D&D is the illustrations that are in the books. There was something called a needle gun, and it wrapped around your forearm, and it came out to a long, thin barrel. And didn't do a whole lot of damage, but it was fun. It was fun. I played it way back then, and we kind of walked away from it because, well, that spun off some other stuff. That spun off Rifts, and then GURPS, and then D&D went into 3rd edition, and then 3.5, which was pretty meta there for a long time. Then they went to 4th edition to turn it into a tabletop wargaming game, and that's fine, but not really truly D&D, although some people might argue with that. I didn't like 4th edition at all. I like the books. The books are fine, but when they started changing up some of the base core rules, it just... No, I'm not digging it. 5th edition, though, the way I feel about 5th edition kind of rolls everything back to... It has a very AD&D feel. It's got some more details on some of the rules, which is great. However, it just streamlines things back the way 2nd edition, the way AD&D felt to me. That's my take on that. That's the flavor I get. And that's the great thing about D&D, man. You say Dungeons and Dragons as if it's a very set core rule. It's not. D&D is wide open. So you can have a Star Wars setting. It's going to take a creative DM to modify some things for the house rules. And that's the great thing about D&D. The DM, what the DM says goes. The DM is the god of that multiverse, that plane of existence in that multiverse. So he can have some different rules. And when I play D&D and I'm DMing, I have certain tabletop rules that by default, I let certain bonuses stack. You can stack bonuses twice. So if 2 different spellcasters are casting shield, you don't just pick the strongest shield spell and use that. It stacks on your armor, and it stacks on the one shield spell, and it stacks on the other shield spells. So you're allowed to layer, because to me that makes sense. That's just one of the house rules. And also, yeah, you can roll a d20 and get critical fumbles and critical hits on skills checks. So just like if you're trying to pick a lock, you can fumble it and break your lock pick, create a noise. All kinds of bad things can happen, or you can just walk through that lock like the stainless steel rat without breaking pace, as they say. So I like to have fun with it, because that is exactly what the game's all about. It's fun, and how you DM is all up to you. But I really enjoy it. But this Star Wars setting, I'm having such a blast with it. Now there are published, printed core rule books for Star Wars and in their own role-playing game, or there's some rules that are 5th edition that help you turn 5th edition into Star Wars. And I'm probably going to invest in some of those books because I'm having such a blast with it. The character I'm playing is a retired, finger quotes retired, ex-clone trooper. So he's a clone, but he's a veteran. He's scarred up. He's a recon scout type clone trooper. So, a little rogue, but very sneaky, very skilled, very crafty, very intelligent. It's real easy to be like, Mandalorian. And you can do a Mandalorian if you want, because it's an open world. It's all theater of the mind, whatever your imagination can conjure, you can create. But I've got this retired clone trooper. He's scarred up. His name's Harbinger, based on the coding that he had. H48, 3R. That just kind of translated into Harbinger. Anyway, So Harbinger is just a grisly kind of his own man. Not a lot of clones left out there after the Clone Wars. So he's definitely against the Empire. And the setting in the Star Wars universe is it's between episode 3 and episode 4. So the New Hope hasn't quite got there yet. And rumor of the Death Star construction, it hasn't even really come about yet. But it's a fun setting, and we're having a blast. And it's kind of great to be able to sit down at the table and tabletop game. I tried doing DMing an online D&D campaign. You know, and you can watch Critical Role and all the other D&D games out there. But unless you're at the table with the other players, you know, reading the subtleties of their facial expressions and the little, you could call it sublingual communication that you can get between players and the DMs, you know, that adds color to what is essentially a black and white experience if you're only like using Zoom or like what we were using Google Hangouts. So that campaign, I lost motivation for it, and I think everybody did too. And it's just kind of a mutual thing that it's not working out. At least I feel it's not working out. And being the DM, you know, nobody's really interested in continuing. And it's sad, but when you have a group of friends around the table, get a big ass kitchen table, everybody sits around as social distance as possible, and man, there's nothing better. It's good. It's good. And that's maybe one of the reasons why, you know, I'm enjoying this D&D campaign in the Star Wars setting so much. A, I'm a player instead of the DM. B, it's a new setting with new characters, and it's Star Wars. And C, it's back to the table, and that makes D&D so much better. Guys, if you haven't played D&D before ever, or if it's been 20 plus years since you've played, dude, go get some 5th edition books, get the new player handbook, get the new DM guide, get the new monster manual. That's all you need. But expand that with Xanathar's Guide to Everything, because what's in there is awesome. And I do like Volo's Guide to Monsters, though that's not really necessary, but at least Xanathar's Guide to Everything, get that. Alright, something to think about. Dungeons and Dragons, love it.